Welcome, ladies and gents. Chris Andre here. You can find me at BetBoxing on Twitter. Of course, you can subscribe to the channel. Let's talk boxing. Let's talk about Josh Kelly's superb performance, because it was superb. It was completely dominant against Troy Williamson for the British title in a bit of a Northeast derby, a grudge match there. I call it superb, but there is a but there for me, and we'll get to that in a moment. I think a lot of the times one's expectation of a fight can dictate how that person analyzes or judges a specific performance. I think a lot of people felt this fight would be very, very close and competitive, and as a result they're calling this a masterclass from Josh Kelly. You've had other people that have been more measured, brilliant analysts too, people like Hatman, who felt that Josh Kelly has really improved in terms of his clinch game. I was in Hatman's Element group. Shout out to Hatman. And guys, if you haven't already subscribed to Hatman's Patreon and gotten on his Element group, what are you guys waiting for, right? But Hatman felt as though he's brought in a really good clinch game, and he was able to dictate the tempo in that way. I saw things a little bit differently, and it might be down to the fact that I was expecting Josh Kelly to be dominant in this fight. I did say that there could be some hairy moments. In fact, let me read to you what it is that I said to David S., who asked me on Twitter for a breakdown. I was unable to bring a video. I know I said this last week as well, and the week before, I think, and I do apologize, guys, for my lack of pre-fight breakdowns. I've just been so busy with work. I just haven't had the time, and unfortunately it's going to be like this for me until Christmas. But David S. asked me how I felt the fight would go, and I responded on Twitter to say, for me, Josh Kelly has all the tools that he should really be dealing with Troy Williamson. He should be winning this fight. Troy isn't hard to hit, and Kelly has got heavy hands, in my opinion, and we'll get to that later because the knockout ratio doesn't suggest that, but we'll get to that in a moment. And he has a lot of natural talent and athleticism too. But I think he's too reliant on these physical attributes, and he makes some errors. One problem is that he exerts a lot of energy unnecessarily. For instance, he'll pull these jerky movements when he's not in range anyway, so they're not necessary to pull. And in the past, he's done that until he's backed up onto the ropes. And when he gets there, instead of trying to pivot out and change the angle and get a guy to reset, to rotate around the ring, he plants his feet, and he either looks for a big counter shot, or he'll look for a shot and then try to bring his head off the line after that. But essentially, you know that he's going to plant in that moment. So if you're stalking him, you know, right, now he's going to stop moving, essentially. And so he can become a little bit immobile with his feet, which is, in my opinion, his best weapon when he's in that sort of area of the ring. When he does plant, one of the methods that he uses to try and be evasive after throwing a punch is to dip to his own right hand side. So there's quite a pattern there. And so for me, for somebody who's got the biomechanics, I explained to David, to adjust and throw a lead uppercut or accurate downwards punches could, you know, just behind the ear, could cause him a lot of problems. You could find him consistently. And one of the issues that Troy Williamson has, in my opinion, is that although he's quite good at targeting the body at times with a short little uppercut, he's shown that in the past. To me, often when you see guys change the level against him, and you even saw this in the first round against Ted Cheeseman, who's not a particularly, you know, fluid mover, when a guy would change the levels and duck, you'd see Troy would throw shots from a straight high guard, that high position, and they'll often whiz over the top of the head. So he'll throw straight shots or hooks. He's not really a guy that adjusts to a level change particularly well. And because he comes in behind that high guard, I felt as though he'd be particularly susceptible to being hit with an up jab. And you saw, well, we'll get to that in a moment, the you saw part, but I was explaining how I felt as though this could be a real problem for him. And so ultimately, one of the problems that he's going to have is he's going to be getting lit up early on, in my opinion, and a lot depends on how hurt he would have been by the 8th round. If he's able to stay in touch and not take too much damage and wear down Josh Kelly, make him work really hard, go to that body, he may have invested enough whereby the last 4 rounds become really difficult for Josh Kelly. Nonetheless, although he's a heavy-handed guy in his own right, Williamson, and he's a tough man and he'll be bringing the heat throughout, I just felt, I said that Josh, you know, is probably too skilled. He's going to have too much for him, and so I'm excited for the fight, but I expect Josh Kelly to win. So when I expect Josh Kelly to win, and I don't think it'll be particularly competitive, but there could be some hairy moments in those latter rounds, when I then see the fight play out the way it played, I'm not sitting there going, oh wow, I can't believe he's 6-0 up, 7-0 up, 8-0 up. It doesn't surprise me really. But whilst I totally agree with the likes of Hatman, whereby the clinch game, particularly in those championship rounds, was very good. He was able to change the level, come in, be quite slippery even on the inside when he was there, and tie up Troy Williamson. I liked that. He's not really going to work when he's doing that. He'll land that shot as he's timing Williamson on his way in. He'll land that shot, then he'll tie up. In those moments, he's taking a breather. But I want you to consider round 5 for an example. Prior to round 5, you saw that the pattern was set whereby he had his hands low. Troy was coming in with that high guard, looking to bring the heat, and he was getting caught with uppercuts and left hooks, check hooks. He was getting caught with a lot of power shots. Sporadically, when he would throw the up jab, it couldn't miss. And you saw that he wasn't really doing these over-the-top jerky movements that I've been critical of him in the past. I'm thinking, okay, he's conserving energy here. But by the 3rd round, he started to bring in a lot of those movements. And I'm thinking, okay, let's see if he's going to be able to start dictating the tempo and control the tempo a little bit whilst being offensive. And in round 5, there was a great start to the round from Kelly where he started to just shoot the up jab. He wasn't throwing power shots, because one of the things that he does is essentially load up on everything. He's waiting for you to come in, waiting for you to throw a shot, and then he'll try and load up with a big shot to hurt you, essentially. You don't need to be doing that with every single shot. Whereas in round 5, when you're not needing to exert that energy, that over-the-top energy of loading up, he was able to dictate with the up jab for the first 30 seconds. Then he went away from that again. And he started to have these big exaggerated movements where he's dipping to the side and pivoting out. These require explosive movements, explosive outputs of energy in order to slip the first shot and then get out. And you need more explosive athletic energy to really let go of these big individual pot shot and power shots. And he's heavy-handed. But because he doesn't go about methodically breaking you down, he'll land 1 or 2 pot shots and then he almost gives you a break because he then postures or maintains range. Had he been more methodical in the way he puts his work together, I think he'd have a lot more stoppages, because he is heavy-handed. You can see the weight of the shots. There's snap there, and there's some natural heavy-handed power, but he doesn't put it together like a guy who's got killer instinct and who's destructive. Now in the 6th round, Barry Jones, George Groves were correctly pointing out that Troy was fighting too tall. And that's why pre-fight I was explaining how he was susceptible to the up jab. So it's not like these punches weren't there for him. The shot selection for me was a little bit off for him, because if you're constantly loading, what you're saying is, right, I'm going to light you up. And let's not forget, when he fought Avanesian early in the fight, he was lighting him up. When he's in top gear, Josh Kelly's class. He's really, really good. There's a reason he had a lot of hype behind him. He's a very talented fighter. The problem is, you can't drive top gear like throughout the course of a fight. You will run out of gas. And so rather than just control the tempo by tying up, which essentially means I'm going to park up and refuel, why not be able to drop a gear and still drive forward, still progress with your offensive work? And that's why I want to see him jab a lot more. I want to see him to be able to use the initiative to instigate attacks using the jab and dictating the tempo with the jab. And through the jab, you can lure guys onto counter shots instead of you waiting for him to make a move for you to counter punch him. And one of the problems that Troy Williamson had, listen, he's a very tough man, very game, what a warrior, so much respect for him. But he was a little bit basic in terms of, if you're talking about the top level. He would come into range and then he was almost tentative. He certainly became more tentative as the fight wore on because he was eating those big shots. But he wasn't feinting to try and draw that counter. He wasn't using foot pressure whereby his feet are just in range to make Kelly feel like he needs to move. But he's sort of lent half back and he's not ready to commit. But he's just putting that mental exertion, ramping up that dial on the mental exertion of Josh Kelly. He wasn't really doing that. So for me, it felt as though it was too easy for Josh to be able to do these things, like the smothering, for instance. When you're on the outside and you're standing and you're a little bit tentative and you know you're going to lead up with one big power shot and your opponent is looking to counter you with that big powerful shot, because he's so good at moving away and he's got that upper body movement, there comes a point where you start to get more desperate and you start to overreach with your shots. You start to lean over your lead foot. And when you do that, that's what happens when you overcommit your weight and the other opponent's able to then change up from moving backwards to forwards. And that's where the smother happens. If you saw my preview to the Kambosos Devin Haney fight, the second fight, that's what I was pointing out as one of the major problems that Kambosos was having against Devin Haney. That inability to catch up with the guy, to get past the edge of the spear, for those of you that remember the preview, you know what I'm talking about, and then to get inside and let go of your sword work. You're up against the spearman. Well, similar sort of thing applies here. He couldn't quite reach him, so then he starts to get overly aggressive with that entry point without being smart with it and working your way in with feints. And against a top level pressure fighter, I don't think he's going to make those same errors. So have I seen enough personally to say, Josh Kelly's grown enough whereby he's ready for the big time. Maybe not. The talent is there though. He's got the weapons there. I just feel like he needs to put them together a bit better. Use that heavy-handed power in a more methodical way to be more destructive. Be able to bring in a jab where you're varying the power of the jab and the speed of the jab, so you're able to stop a guy from just running in on you, but you're able to still win those slow rounds. You're able to slow down the rounds and win them. And yes, the clinch game is great as well. Keep that up, no doubt about it. That's a new wrinkle to his game. But I'm not sure there's enough yet where I'm going to say he's ready to really go for a world title. Because Adam Booth was talking about, we want to be the best and we want to fight the best. Well, from British title, he's not ready for world level yet, in my opinion. I'm sure he's going to end up wanting to go for a European or something like that. But there's still work there to be done for me. But listen, so talented, there's no doubt about it. And Troy Williamson is a warrior. He'll come again. There's a lot of big fights that he could be in domestically. Let me know what you think, ladies and gents, of the fight that you saw tonight and where you think Josh Kelly goes from here. How did you observe the performance of Josh Kelly? Thanks for watching, everyone. Chat to you soon. Take care. God bless.